to live a long life, accompany his daughter down the aisle with pride, and light up the stage one final time with that enduring grin. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, however, was buried in silence. There was a deep hush that seemed to last forever. Up until now, nobody could have predicted what would tear that stillness apart. It started with a mother in heartbreak, a shaky voice, and a USB disc that was never meant to be seen. Pamela Warner took center stage as a woman bearing the burden of the truth, not as a famous person. She stood there clutching the proof that might completely upend the narrative, her hands trembling as if they were carrying lightning itself, and her eyes swollen from years of crying. Her words struck like a hammer, but her voice broke. A man who had previously appeared untouchable was suddenly in handcuffs. Bill Cosby isn't getting away with it today. He had to deal with the kind of attention he never desired. Suddenly, there is no longer any whispering that Malcolm's death was an accident. As Pamela's tear-streaked confession spilled out, the entire world stopped. She said something that no mother should ever have to say, and they heard it. He did not drown. Power, quiet, and the same system that buries the truth and protects predators drowned him. The footage, the paperwork, and the suffering are all real. Of all the facts, that was the most unvarnished and unadulterated. A final, heartbreaking film, a hidden folder, and a terrifying note that said, "Let the water wash it away." They didn't account for the fire raging inside his mother, but they believed they could delete Malcolm like he was just a name on paper. The system that attempted to conceal his narrative is now beginning to fall apart. This goes beyond a simple scandal. It's a war cry combined with grief, a complete and utter failure. Bill Cosby has indeed been taken into custody, but that is only the beginning. Because Malcolm didn't just say goodbye before leaving. He left a task behind. His message is so strong that it can be heard on every phone, TV, and screen in the nation. Nobody anticipated this moment. A swarm of flashing cameras outside the federal courthouse in Los Angeles. Reporters pushing through barriers. In the street, fans are sobbing. Slowly, a dark SUV approaches. The air was heavy with tension. Afterward, the door opens. With federal investigators on either side, Bill Cosby emerges, stone-faced, mute, and frigid. This was not fiction from Hollywood. This wasn't a fantasy. It was taking place. And all of a sudden, the rumors, internet forums, and private discussions that had been circulating for years gained a face and a headline. No one anticipated it would progress this far. Not until Pamela Warner took a stand and made it public. "My son was killed by him." She lacked the polished tone of a press release in her speech. It carried the weight of unadulterated, unrefined anguish transformed into a truth weapon. She had no intention of seeking revenge. Justice was what she was after. Justice for all the voices that had been muffled by Hollywood's flawless smiles and strict non-disclosure agreements. Not just Malcolm. At this point, the stillness had been broken. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was regarded by the globe as the beating heart of a generation. On film, America saw the boy grow up. The spirit of Theo Huxtable, a guy whose laughter used to reverberate off the walls of millions of houses' living rooms. However, on 2025, July 20th, the laughter ceased. According to the official report, he drowned while on a tranquil Costa Rican vacation. However, it is no longer the case. Not even close. A stroll on the beach in the evening. No witnesses, no answers, and no indications of foul play. The case is over, or so they believed. Mothers, however, never forget. Not the tone of their last phone conversation with their child. Not the discomfort in his voice. Not the mysterious phrases that reverberate endlessly. "Tell everyone I wasn't lying if something were to happen to me, Mom." Pamela Warner remained in the same place. She was unable to. From the beginning, there was something strange about that official story. Then one day, she discovered it buried deep in Malcolm's old winter coat. The liner was sewn with a sealed envelope. There is a USB drive inside. It scrolled 5 terrifying words. Her hands trembled as she plugged it in, just in case something happened to me. Her whole world fell apart when the files opened. It was a terrible digital vault. NDAs signed by some of the most influential figures in the business, wire transfers, secret recordings, call records, and confidential memos. One folder with the name Shadow Network, which seemed like something from a spy thriller, was concealed, deep within that archive. One name kept coming up, circled, underlined, and repeated repeatedly throughout every document, transcript, and thread: Bill Cosby. Pamela initially struggled to put it all together. Why would a beloved TV personality be connected to her son's passing? She then discovered the video, not from an interview or a show. Malcolm was by himself. His voice was heavy and low, his face was pallid, and his eyes were sunken. "I didn't make it if you're viewing this. Or I was prevented from doing so by someone." He described a covert system, a silent, vicious device designed to eliminate anyone who knew too much in addition to hiding torture. Then he uttered the words that would make all the difference. They obliterate you, not merely silence you. They completely change your story. Nobody even considers asking what actually transpired because it is so neat and accurate. The realization of the reality brought Pamela to her knees. She realized then that her son's passing wasn't the result of a terrible accident. He was no longer there. She was now in possession of the smoking gun. She made no hesitation. She sent all of the files, videos, and secret recordings on that USB directly to the Department of Justice. Weeks went by. Nothing. Just silence. No calls, no updates. Then her phone chimed one evening. One text and an unknown number. "Look at the news." She switched the television on. The identical breaking news banner is displayed on every channel. A federal inquiry into the killing of Malcolm-Jamal Warner was recently confirmed by the DOJ. However, the headline that went viral on the internet stated that Bill Cosby was being investigated by the authorities in relation to the Warner case. 48 hours after the federal warrant is issued, Bill Cosby was in custody within 72. Pamela watched the coverage while seated in her living room. No celebratory speech or celebration, just silent sobs. Her son was finally getting attention after years of neglect. Supporters displayed posters, painted murals, and lit candles outside the courthouse. A single symbol stood out as if it were a gut hit. He was drowned, not drowned. The video on the USB had begun to leak. The whistleblowers, former studio employees, legal help, and even a late-night show producer joined the small snippets of Malcolm's last video that went viral online. A voicemail that was released sent shivers down the country. "We were instructed not to alter his video. We were instructed to let it go." However, he was preparing to go public and knew he had proof. Pamela Warner had evolved beyond a distraught mother. She had turned into a movement spokesperson. Her name was in every headline. Her comments were cited in each interview, and one sentence served as a catchphrase. "He was erased, not simply killed. And until the world finds out who did it, I won't give up." And because the same Hollywood apparatus that had previously silenced victims was now under attack, everyone was paying attention. The guy who was once referred to as America's father was being termed something much darker at the center of the storm. Cosby's legal staff was in disarray. Reporters are cut off by PR companies, and powerful CEOs disappear into silence. Overnight, social media accounts were deleted. However, it was too late already. The documents were available. It was the bare truth. Furthermore, nothing more than a mother's unwavering love had just destroyed the same structure that had formerly protected predators. They believed that by killing the messenger, they could destroy the message. However, Pamela did more than only spread the word. She struck the match that ignited their whole deception business. Now, Bill Cosby was incarcerated. Malcolm's narrative, however, was only getting started. They had bet that Pamela Warner would fade into the background, that the commotion would subside, and that this would be just another fleeting viral phenomenon that fades after a week. It wasn't noise, though. The cry was a mother's scream, and it was reverberating throughout a planet that had been shattered for too long. There was proof behind that scream that was so dangerous, it had the potential to topple entire empires. Shock. Waves rippled through every inch of Hollywood's golden walls following Bill Cosby's arrest. However, this was only the prelude, because nothing could have prepared anyone for the monster that was revealed when the DOJ eventually opened the first Evidence Vault, which is now known as the Warner Archive. It all began with a single memo sent out on June 18, 2025, 2 days prior to Malcolm's passing, marked for internal, confidential use only. The headline, Crisis Containment, and the Worsening Warner Scenario. Inside, executives outlined a methodical, icy strategy to undermine Malcolm's reputation before he could go public. The words that made Pamela's blood run cold were there. If containment doesn't work, use tragedy as a diversion. The water is still. A good sight. It was not lyrical. There was no metaphor in it. It was a murder plot disguised in tactful corporate media jargon. And it wasn't just that memo. There were several audio recordings, phone conversations, private meetings, and late voice notes for the night. Malcolm was captured on camera as he was putting the pieces of the puzzle together. A network executive's voice is brimming with uneasiness. In one recording, he is no longer a child. He is intelligent. He is observing trends. We are all at risk if he gives up what he has. Another voice, cool but serene, enters. Let's then ensure that he doesn't. Fragment 7, the video that totally destroyed Pamela Warner, followed. A covert video feed, grainy, dark, and shaky pixels. However, it was unmistakable. Malcolm was the one. His face tensed with nervousness. He was by himself in his home office, going over files. He exhales as if he were holding the weight of the entire planet while staring directly into the webcam. Even my mother won't believe it if I don't record this, even though I shouldn't. His voice fades to a whisper as he picks up a tiny voice recorder. Tonight, they gave me a call. I'm risking everything, they said. However, what should I do? Remain silent? Give them the victory. Then the door was knocked on 3 times sharply. Malcolm freezes, flinches, and turns off the camera. The feed stops. After that night, Pamela would later claim she never saw her son again. Social media didn't only respond when that video went viral. It burst forth. Anger, sorrow, disbelief, and the devastating insight that no one understood. The suffering Malcolm had been enduring. There was a man being pursued behind each red carpet. Grin. Justice for Malcolm surged above 10 million posts in just 48 hours. Protests broke out in Toronto, Atlanta, New York, and Los Angeles. Huge red letters were used to mark Sunset Boulevard. He did not drown. He was kept quiet. Overnight, murals appeared everywhere. Inscribed on Malcolm's face was the phrase, "They erased him." We recall. After being silent, celebrities were now speaking up. He told me something big was coming, one sitcom actor wrote on social media. I didn't pay attention. I ought to have. Another ex-co-star broke down in tears. He made an effort to alert us. He did, in fact. The DOJ continued its investigation in the interim, and their findings made everything appear mild. The Silence Machine is a file with a straightforward, terrifying title. Version 2.0. There is a 32-page blueprint inside that explains how to totally destroy someone without ever touching them. The blueprint explained everything step by step. Divulge a fictitious scandal, rumors about plant mental health. To conceal the true narrative, use clip 8 news cycles. Postpone your FOIA requests. Local cops should be paid. Provide survivors. With hush money payouts. Bill Cosby was not being shielded by a single man. It was a device. A money-driven enterprise controlled by attorneys and motivated by terror. He had also hacked into it, Malcolm. He has a map of every moving component. He was prepared to bring everything to an abrupt end. However, someone reached him first. The second leak then appeared. And the DOJ wasn't the source this time. It originated within. A simple, unmarked box was sent to one of the networks Malcolm had listed in his data. No address for return. There is a single folder with the label buried on a hard disk. Pamela discovered something heartbreaking within. Transcripts, emails, and a disturbing risk assessment from Cosby's former public relations agency. In one paper, it was stated in stern business terms. In the event that Warner publishes, turn on mitigation, keep an eye on movements. Have a backup plan in case extraction doesn't work out. Once more, that word, .backup plan. A code for something lethal that is clean and appropriate for a boardroom. Grasping her son's sweatshirt, Pamela read it 17 times while sobbing and muttering, "They planned it. God, oh God, Everything was prearranged in court. The legal team for Cosby attempted to conceal the leaks. They characterized the data as fraudulent, asserted that hackers had falsified the evidence, and wrote it off as a smear campaign concocted by a distraught mother. The voice memo, however, followed. Malcolm didn't realize the microphone was still on when he recorded it. He is chatting to himself while walking with irregular breathing. "I have a choice," they said. "Keep calm and live your life. Talk, and, well, we're here." A brief, broken laugh followed. "I'm no longer afraid. I'm simply worn out. However, I won't be present." Quiet. Then nothing. Pamela posted that video with a single caption: "I didn't lose my son. Money, demons, and silence all drowned him." The response was immediate. The nation was confined. At this point, senators demanded a thorough congressional investigation. Cosby wasn't simply being surrounded by walls. They were getting closer to the entire device. They hired a special counsel. Networks hurried to conduct internal inquiries. It was made apparent by federal prosecutors that Bill Cosby's arrest was only the prelude. However, Pamela wasn't done yet. She had one final card to use. It was a letter. Malcolm had left her a letter. "You are aware that I did not make it if you are reading this. However, I'm confident that you'll battle and that the truth will outlive me. So it's okay. Mom, you are loved. Keep me from being erased by them." Pamela always has the letter with her. Even though the paper is soft, wrinkled from folding, and tear-stained, its potency hasn't diminished in the slightest. His mugshot is currently the most popular image on the internet in a world where Cosby used to dominate TV screens. He is no longer the father of America. His prisoner number is XXX, facing a wall of charges while incarcerated. And the truth, which is much worse, he tried to hide the same reality behind layers of silence for decades. Malcolm didn't live to see this day. However, it was made feasible by every document, video, and piece of evidence he left behind. Because he was more than simply an actor, after all. He was a truth-teller, a whistleblower, and a son who refused to close his eyes and stared into the dark. And the voice he never had was the voice of the mother who gave him life. This goes beyond a simple scandal. It's a revolution. It is the initial fissure in the foundation of a whole business centered around silence. Additionally, it serves as a reminder that while you can destroy the messenger, the message will always remain intact. There was a distinct stillness in the courtroom that day. It's the sort that presses against your chest until you are unable to breathe, not the kind that provides you calm. A soundless scream of silence. At the defense table, Bill Cosby sat with a blank expression and stiff shoulders, flanked by attorneys who no longer exuded confidence, but rather fear. Pamela Warner stood erect, across the courtroom holding the folded note her son had left behind, her palms steady, her gaze fixed on his. This was more than a trial. This was unexpected. The entire globe was observing. Although cameras were prohibited inside, the truth is not kept in a cage for very long. Witnesses took the stand one by one. Retired executives, studio editors, and former assistants all shared the same narrative. We were instructed to keep quiet. We were compensated to forget. They were aware that he knew too much. Then came the unexpected blow. A man who used to be Cosby's security approached the stand. As he testified, his voice faltered. "I was tasked with keeping an eye on Malcolm, not to keep him safe, but to follow him. At first, I didn't know why. Then I received a call the day he passed away. Stand down," in a single sentence. "It's taken care of." Throughout the courtroom, there were gasps. The judge appeared immobile as well. Cosby remained mute, expressionless, as he had no idea what to say. Everyone could no longer ignore what Malcolm had feared and all he had recorded, which was now being said aloud in front of the globe. Outside, protest placards, pictures, and candles lined the streets. While some individuals stood in silence, others wept aloud. The sort of quiet that at last had meaning. Millions of people watched live updates online. Hashtags surged back to prominence. #, Malcolm's justice. No drowning, #, the machine's # is falling. However, nobody was prepared for what followed. Pamela had been keeping the second hard disk as a last resort. She had no intention of keeping it for the court. She refused to provide it to the press. The individuals were the reason she was retaining it. Furthermore, this drive did more than just list names. The entire machine was exposed. Surveillance footage, transcripts of private meetings, and off-the-record agreements between law enforcement and networks. Internal-only information is not disclosed by stamped documents, and a terrifying operational blueprint is at the heart of it all. Echo Protocol, in 2 words, it served as their final insurance plan. A computerized kill switch designed to forever silence anyone who dared to speak up and destroy the reputation of any suspected celebrity. Malcolm had been gradually putting it all together. The world was going to witness it all now. Malcolm had concealed it file by file for his mother, not for himself. Pamela was now prepared to reveal to the world what her son had sacrificed his life to defend. She was quite honest. Everything was posted by her. No filters, no redactions, no fear. Every file, every name, every plan. The internet didn't simply go viral. It burst apart. On live broadcasts, news anchors stopped in the middle of their sentences. Prominent attorneys declined to participate in interviews. During the night, senior executives quit. Unexpectedly, all network feeds went dead. Then, one by one, the names started to disappear. However, it all began with the loudest collapse. 3 weeks following his apprehension, Bill Cosby was formally accused of accessory to murder, obstruction, and conspiracy. The media made an effort to mold the story. Some referred to it as unprecedented. Others held on to the word alleged, but Malcolm's voice, his files, and the fire had already solidified the fact. Pamela didn't allow herself to burn out. Pamela never aimed for notoriety. The world will never forget her face, even though she never desired the limelight. She only made one appearance in front of reporters. She whispered, holding Malcolm's picture close to her chest. They only succeeded in making his voice stronger despite their best efforts to suppress him. She turned and left after that. Just the facts. No cheers, no press tour. Malcolm's legacy started to emerge from the ashes on that day. Archives were created by universities in his honor. In his honor, advocacy organizations received funding. Murals of his face blossomed on walls all throughout the nation and the world. Each one serves as a remembrance of the man who would not shut his eyes to the night. And nobody was able to remove him this time. His face now flashed across a painting that said, "They can kill the messenger," but did not convey the message, encircled by painted flames. The folder that Malcolm had first referred to as Shadow Network was now being studied in law schools as the case that broke down Hollywood's barriers, and a street in his hometown was renamed Warner Way. However, one final video was the most impactful. It had never been handled or made public. It was labeled finalfall.mpp4 and was hidden deep in the second hard drive. Pamela took a while to view it. She waited for justice to begin to take hold before the news stopped making headlines. She then lit a solitary candle and hit play one evening while she was by herself in her living room. Malcolm showed up on the screen, calm despite his weariness. He no longer had fear in his eyes. Then he gave a single smile. "Hey, Mom, I suppose this is over if you're watching. Or perhaps it's only the beginning." He stopped and took a long breath. "I wasn't motivated to act heroically by this. Someone had to do it, so I did it. You've always advised me to speak up when it counts. This is important, though." Leaning forward, he gazed straight into the lens. "They attempted to suffocate me with quiet, but I had you. I also knew you would complete the task I began." The final sentence caused his voice to break. "Mom, you are loved. I apologize, but I want to praise you for having the loudest voice I've ever heard." The video came to an end. Pamela did not cry. She said, "You were never erased. Close the laptop and kiss the shabby letter. You become a part of history." Malcolm is now remembered by the world not only as a celebrity, but also as the man who stood up to the darkness. However, Malcolm now endures as a reminder that truth can rise to the surface and ignite the world, regardless of how far it has been buried. Even if Bill Cosby is still in jail, the arrest wasn't the true triumph. It was the change, the realization, the destruction of the system that for decades allowed him and countless others to live in peace. One son's bravery and a mother's refusal to allow him to fade into the background caused that system to fall apart. And don't worry, this isn't the end. It's a warning. Your time is over. Predators lurking behind contracts, executives selling silence for profit, and machines operating on cover-ups and fear. The quiet has been broken. More than ever, the message is being heard. Because Malcolm left behind more than just a scandal. The world is currently following the map and blueprint he left behind. You already know that this is more than simply a story if you've read this far. From the grave, a scream emerged. Malcolm-Jamal Warner did not pass away, quietly. Silence killed him because he was brave enough to speak. Because he dared to speak what others could only whisper. His voice is now heard everywhere. In the murals painted around cities, in the headlines, and in the streets. And the man who was formerly known as America's father is sitting in a cell, stripped of his disguise, confronting the unbearable truth. However, do you truly believe that this is the end of it? Malcolm was taken by the machine that deleted evidence, bought silence, and exchanged contracts for truth. It continues to exist, continue to breathe, continue to observe, and continue to wait for the next courageous voice to be heard. Unless we put a stop to it. You can't just memorize this, it must be screamed, echoed, and repeated. Therefore, avoid scrolling past this. Call out his name, drop the number. Malcolm's justice in the comments. Distribute this video, reflecting on it. Post it everywhere. Let the quiet know that we are aware of the truth and will not allow it to wane. Should this video disappear tomorrow, you will understand why. However, they are unable to eradicate us altogether. If this shook you, hit like. To ensure you don't miss the next reality they attempt to hide, subscribe. Activate alerts because the next event may be more sinister than this one. They believed they could destroy the message. You now carry it though. Make sure they hear it because Malcolm failed to say farewell. He left a task behind, and it's yours now. I'll see you in the next one. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.